the Abakari following Lagos State claims of ignorance of his whereabouts. This is the World News on AIT. I am Tosi Obiashem. You're welcome. Spain has recorded another 864 deaths related to coronavirus, the highest in one day as the total number of deaths across Europe has gone beyond 30,000. More than 9,000 people have died in Spain, which is second only to Italy in fatalities caused by the virus. Confirmed cases in the country have passed 100,000, but numbers show the infection rate continues to fall. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the pandemic was the world's biggest challenge since World War II. The warning comes amid dire predictions about the possible economic impact of measures imposed to fight the virus. A UN report estimates that up to 25 million jobs could be lost around the world as the result of the outbreak. The number of confirmed cases around the world is now over 870,000, with more than 43,000 deaths, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. Wednesday's number of deaths in Spain was marginally higher than the 849 announced the day before, and the country has now seen more than 800 deaths for 5 days in a row. But health officials believe the latest 12% increase in daily infections is further evidence that the rate has stabilized. Spain has been in lockdown for over 2 weeks, with further restrictions on movement introduced 2 days ago. But health services in the hardest hit areas, including Madrid and Catalonia, are still struggling with shortages of medical equipment, a particular problem. The number of fatalities in the U.S. has now topped 4,000, and Iran says COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus, has claimed 3,000 lives. Belgium said more than half of its intensive care beds were occupied as it reported a rise of 123 deaths, bringing the country's death toll to 828. Meanwhile, the NATO military alliance said it remained in a state of operational readiness to defend the borders of its members despite the pandemic, although it had cancelled a number of exercises to prevent the spread of infection. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that the current coronavirus outbreak is the biggest challenge for the world since World War II. He said it could bring a recession that probably has no parallel in the recent past. His warning comes amid dire predictions about the possible economic impact of measures imposed to fight the virus. The number of confirmed cases around the world is now nearing 860,000, with more than 42 deaths. The death toll in the U.S. is now more than 4,000 higher than the declared number of fatalities in China, where the outbreak began last year. Johns Hopkins University said 865 people had died in the past 24 hours in the U.S., and in all, more than 189,000 people in the country have been infected. About 3 out of 4 Americans are now or about to be under some form of lockdown as more U.S. states tighten measures to fight the coronavirus, which causes the COVID-19 disease. Meanwhile, Spain, second only to Italy in the number of recorded fatalities, has seen 849 deaths in the last 24 hours, the highest number it has had in a single day. In the UK, a total of 1,789 people have died, a rise of 381, officials say. Tributes are being paid to world-renowned South African scientist Gita Ramji, who has died from COVID-19 related complications. She dedicated many years of her life to finding HIV prevention solutions for women, her colleague and friend Gavin Churchyard said. Head of UNAIDS, Winnie Brahima, said Professor Ramji's death was a huge loss at a time when the world needed her most. South Africa has the largest number of people living with HIV in the world. The country has begun a 3-week lockdown as part of efforts to stop the spread of coronavirus. The passing of Professor Ramji comes as a huge blow to the entirety of the healthcare sector and the global fight against HIV/AIDS, the country's Deputy President David Mabuza said in a statement. He said, and I quote, "In her, we have indeed lost a champion in the fight against the HIV epidemic. Ironically, at the hands of this global pandemic, in our honor, we should heed the call to flatten the curve by strengthening our responses to this global pandemic as well as continue the fight to achieve zero new HIV infections." End of quote. Ramji, who died in hospital near the coastal city of Durban on Tuesday, had been working as the chief scientific officer at the Aurum Institute, a leading authority in the fight against HIV and tuberculosis. Gita was a vibrant person, a real fighter. If she sets her mind on something, nobody better stand in her way. Aurum head Professor Chachiad, who knew her for many years, told the BBC's Kuza Filani, "That will be my last memory of her, how she fought with everything to advance access to healthcare for women in disadvantaged communities." President Donald Trump and his healthcare advisors urged Americans on Tuesday to follow strict social distancing measures ahead of a tough weeks that could lead to at least 100,000 deaths from the coronavirus in the United States. White House coronavirus coordinator Deborah Birx displayed charts, demonstration data, and modeling that showed an enormous jump in deaths to 100,000 to 200,000 people from the virus in the coming 2 weeks. Trump said 2.2 million people could have died, according to the modeling, if no mitigation effort had been put in place. He cited those high projections when announcing on Sunday that he planned to extend the federal guidelines rather than pursuing his earlier stated desire to get the U.S. economy moving again by Easter on April 12. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who has said previously that the pandemic could kill between 100,000 and 200,000 people in the United States, said all efforts were being made to make those numbers lower. Australian authorities opened a pop-up coronavirus testing clinic at Sydney's Bondi Beach on Wednesday after several clusters were discovered in the area. Set up by St. Vincent Hospital, those wanting tests could be seen entering the clinic with masks. One local resident said that he had been coughing at work for about a week and decided to get tested. Inside the clinic, nurses put on face masks, protective suits, and sanitize their hands before testing people. Spokesperson for St. Vincent Hospital, David Factor, said health authorities had discovered the hotspot, particularly within the Bekwarra Park community in Bondi. The federal government has planned for up to 100 pop-up clinics across the country to ramp up testing in transmission hotspots. Authorities are now zeroing in on specific areas that have reported clusters of infections following a sustained slowdown in new cases in recent days to around 4,700 nationally. The death toll stands at 20 after a steady creep upward in recent days. The United Kingdom's coronavirus death toll rose by 27% to 1,789 in the space of a day, Britain's Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove said on Tuesday. Speaking at a daily government news briefing, Gove said 381 people died with coronavirus on Monday, which was the UK's highest single increase in deaths. Of 143,186 people tested for COVID-19, 25,150 have tested positive. National Health Service NHS England Executive Director Stephen Powys said there were signs social distancing measures are starting to slow the spread of the virus, but that does not mean the new rules should be relaxed. Powys said the next week or two will be critical as the effectiveness of lockdown restrictions become clearer over that time. The first ventilators, which Britain has recently ordered from businesses, will be completed this weekend and be available to the NHS next week as the country seeks to boost capacity in the face of the coronavirus outbreak. Britain has ordered 10,000 of them from a consortium including Ford, Airbus and McLaren, with other companies such as vacuum cleaner maker Dyson also producing their own equivalent. The Natural Oil and Gas Suppliers Association of Nigeria, NOGASA, has directed its members to deploy all capacities in ensuring the availability of petroleum products to industries and essential end users in these trying times as suppliers of petroleum products, which is key across Nigeria. President of the organization, Kenneth Okorie, says the organization understands the difficulties that the country was facing while confronting the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic in the supply chain of essential services of the economy. Considering the strategic position of the oil and gas sector in the economy, NOGASA operatives have been directed to meticulously follow all cautionary practices in containing the spread of this outbreak are exempted from the lockdown. If you're just joining us, you're watching the World News on AIT. More stories after the break. Just stay with us.
Humanity is simple steps.
Wash your hands with soap very regularly for at least 20 seconds, or you could use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Totally avoid touching your face, eyes, nose, and mouth.
If you cough, cover your mouth with a disposable tissue or bend your arm by the elbow to cover it.
Do not share personal items such as utensils, towels,
And food. Avoid crowded places, maintain social distance, and obey the government stay-at-home directives if you are not on essential services.
And if you have come in contact with a suspected case, isolate yourself in order to protect your friends, family, and the general public.
if you're feeling sick, see a doctor immediately.
Coronavirus
It's not
a death sentence.
Let us all help to stop the spread.
Lagos State government has denied any knowledge of the whereabouts of the Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari. The State Commissioner for Health, Professor Aki Abayomi, made this known Tuesday evening while addressing journalists on the ongoing effort of the state government to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the state. He admitted corresponding with the Chief of Staff in recent past over his health condition but denied any knowledge of his current location. Kyari, who was down with COVID-19 virus, was reportedly flown from Abuja to Lagos on account of the illness. The commissioner, who also spoke on other issues, noted that the state had adequate testing kits, adding that his team is ahead of the virus as the strategies adopted in the state remain effective. The commissioner also assured that the state urgently had capacity to test up to 150 cases per day in the 3 centers, adding that the state is using the molecular biological test, which is 100% accurate to conduct tests on suspected cases. Total new cases cases of COVID-19 have been reported in Nigeria, 9 in Osun, 2 in Edo, and 1 in Ekiti State. As at 12:30 p.m. 4th day of April, there are 151 confirmed cases of COVID-19 reported in Nigeria. 9 have been discharged with 2 deaths. A group of concerned Nigerian youths under the auspices of Nigerian Youth Task Force on COVID-19 NYTFC says it will explore feasible means to implement methods of assisting the Nigerian people in partnership with all the relevant stakeholders to contain the spread of COVID-19 and cushion the effect of the stay-at-home directive for the most vulnerable Nigerians. The group said it realized this target through a structure it has already set up across the nation. Addressing a press conference in Abuja on Monday, the national coordinator, who is also a senior special assistant to the President, Youth and Student Affairs, Nasir Adama, and the convener, Ben Shagari, said they will collaborate with all the key players to embark on massive sensitization and distribution of relief materials.
So we have already set up across the nation the Nigerian Youth Task Force on COVID-19 NYTFC has already deployed its volunteers, among which are well-trained medical personnel with vivid knowledge of the ongoing pandemic and strategies to curb the spread through proper sensitization, dissemination of useful information, and combating fake news.
And the Federal Ministry of Health, the National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Ministry of Humanitarian, National Disasters, IDP, and Social Development, the entire members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, the Lagos State Government, the FCT administration, and all the health workers. The youth group also commended all its volunteers nationwide and encouraged them to remain on their feet in this fight against COVID-19. That's the world news on AIT. I am Tosi of Bekwarra.